Hello, my name is Igor Gavrishchuk. Today is the 23rd of June, Thursday. Ramiz Yunus, a political scientist and former chief of staff of the Azerbaijani government. Hello, Mr. Yunus. Give a like, subscribe, write actual questions. This way YouTube will show the video to more people.
Попрошу наших зрителей, конечно, быть активными, поставить этому видео лайк, подписаться, если не подписаны. Пишите свои вопросы, актуальные, конструктивные, мы будем выносить, конечно же. Но так работают алгоритмы YouTube, чтобы больше людей имели возможность посмотреть и услышать анализ господина Юнуса и понять, что происходит после инаугурации.
Mr. Yunus, we met last Thursday, and 3 days ago was the inauguration of the 47th President Trump. Was there anything unexpected at the inauguration, or was it all protocol? Mr. Yunus, many people in Ukraine noticed that he didn't mention Ukraine. He only talked about stopping wars. He didn't mention Ukraine. Should Trump bring up Ukraine at his inauguration? Good question. I understand the state of Ukrainian society over the last 3 years. You have to understand that there is no Ukrainian centricity in the world and never has been. Neither was there Azeri, Russian, or any other centrality. Certain political forces take advantage of this, especially during elections. They can work on Spanish, Palestinian, Israeli, or Armenian themes, depending on which community is strongly represented in the U.S. After the election, when a person becomes president, his speech is usually general, emphasizing what got him into office rather than promises.
Является главным, что привело его к этой должности, а не вот это все то, что он понаобещал, да?
90% of election promises are not true. They are said to attract voters. Unfortunately, this is a law of the genre that applies not only to the U.S., but to the entire world. The basic things that are important to America are immigration, which is a concern for all of society. Both Republicans and Democrats recognize the problem, but with different approaches. The main thing that is noted is that he curtsied toward Israel in his inaugural address. How did you pay attention to that? It was the only time Biden and Trump stood together. Biden stood up as Trump applauded the deal between Israel and Hamas and the release of the 3 hostages. When Trump said that, Biden stood up, followed by Kamala Harris, the Democrats, and George W. Bush. The whole room stood up. This moment showed how important the subject of Israel is to the U.S. This speaks not only to the influence of the Israel lobby, but also to the importance of the topic of Israel in U.S. political life. Everyone wants to use this topic. It is important not only as a political conjuncture. This is a critical foreign policy topic, and that's why Trump and Biden said it. He's been doing it a lot more than Trump. He couldn't get a deal done until Trump pressed Netanyahu. This deal came about because of the efforts of Biden, Trump, and their teams. Everyone didn't want to cede the laurels of the deal, so it happened like this. He stood up because if he hadn't, they would have said Trump orchestrated the deal. He stood up to show that he too had a hand in the deal. This topic is important, and he didn't touch on the others because he has yet to work with them. He didn't bring up the Chinese topic because he had a good conversation with Xi. He's going to meet with Beijing first, discuss, and then act. He announced tariffs on Mexico and Canada. He promised to work with China, the European Union, Mexico, and Canada first. He has limited himself to Mexico and Canada and has done nothing with Europe. He didn't do anything with China either. The inaugural speech drew me in with its main points. What was happening in the rotunda can be attributed to the weather. It's cold in America right now, with temperatures ranging from -5 to -10 degrees Celsius. It's very cold weather for Washington, especially for those standing outside for hours, given the age of the presidents. Since everyone is a senior citizen, the decision to hold it in the rotunda was the right one. In a chamber setting, the audience was able to observe everything well. There was nothing else of great interest there. The interesting stuff started after Biden flew out and Trump went back to his supporters. He more broadly and harshly criticized the Biden administration and the actions of the previous administration. For me, there was nothing unexpected at this inaugural address. I've already talked to you on the air that there will be a focus on it from the beginning, and the first decrees will be on the domestic agenda. As you can see, most of the 79 executive orders rescinding Biden's guidance are on domestic policy. I don't think he will be leaving America anytime soon, but sending his ministers overseas. Marco Rubio, as far as I know, will start traveling around Latin America next week. The rest will fly to Europe, China, and Southeast Asia. The general will take on the Russia-Ukraine issue to get results in 100 days, as Trump said he would. Not in the sense of a truce, but to study the issues in 100 days and see where this topic stands and how realistic it is. It's important to note that he's already in the Oval Office signing these executive orders. When reporters began their questions, he turned stiffly to the Russian president, curtsying in honor of the USSR's participation in World War II and its losses.
сделал реверанс, как вы помните, да, участию Советского Союза во Второй мировой войне и тем потерям, которые пришлось испытать Советскому Союзу.
We were allies, and the tragedy happening on the planet today with mass casualties was the result of events after World War II. It was Russia that he addressed. Didn't address Ukraine because he said Ukraine was ready for this deal. Russia is to blame, not Ukraine, because it was Russia that started this war. Russia is in a worse situation, as Donald Trump said. Russia should be grateful to Trump for the favor he offered. If he is not heard, he will be forced to harden the U.S. position. It is peace through strength, and by his speech, he strengthens the position of the special envoy, General Kellogg. So that the Kremlin can really hear him. Moscow is cautious about commenting on Trump's remarks, both Putin and Peskov. No aggression. I keep a close eye on Russian propaganda channels. It's part of my job. They have a lot of pessimism. I didn't see the bravado that I saw on the campaign trail. They realize that all Trump has said to get into power is left until November 5th. Trump will be doing real policy today because his previous statements no longer matter. He is in charge of everything that will happen in the United States of America. He can't keep blaming Biden and his administration all the time anymore. Biden and Obama are to blame for everything that happens on the planet. Democrats are to blame because since 1992, after the end of the Cold War, they have not capitalized on the success Republicans had under Reagan and Bush Sr.
республиканцы в лице администрации Рональда Рейгана 8 лет и администрации Джорджа Буша отца.
12 years of successful American leadership.
Американского, так сказать, руководства.
Bill Clinton, in 8 years, squandered the success of ending the Cold War and did not create new conditions for peace.
В течение 8 лет разбазарил весь этот успех и не сумел создать новые условия для нового мира.
And then there's this stupid reset that Obama and Biden are up to. These 4 years of toothless policy of exhortation by the Kremlin have led to the current situation, not to let Ukraine lose and not to let Russia win. Yes, Trump can talk about it on the campaign trail, but as President of the United States, he no longer has the moral authority to do so. We agree that what has been, now we need to act. Judging by his words, he realizes that he will be asked differently now. He will no longer be able to complain about the previous ones. You can see it in his tone. The hardness towards Russia is already showing. He won't have any other options because he can't lose. He can't lose domestically. He has many avenues of influence. I mean, both as president and with congressional support, where he has carte blanche in both houses. Now, all appointees will be approved and funded. There will be no problem in the lower house. Lawsuits and such are commonplace in America. I don't think it will cause him much trouble in pushing the right legislation. There are things that seem unrealistic and probably won't be accomplished. The first area is 14th Amendment decrees and newborns on American soil. Migration and same-sex marriage are serious topics, and he has a lot of support on these issues. America is a puritanical country, after all. America is in crisis and polarized. Democrats, especially in their states, will resist, which will divert his attention and resources to domestic political issues. It will be easier for him to succeed domestically because he has a team, support, and knows his country. In the foreign arena, he cannot afford a negative outcome, whether it is the war in Ukraine, the Middle East, or other important situations. So as you can see, he's acting tough on words so far. He started with Mexico, Canada, and spoke to the Chinese leader. Then there was a big conversation between the Chinese leader and the Russian president. As I understand it, he's starting to tighten relations with Europe. He said this in his online speech at the Davos conference. In Europe, he has strong support from many countries. Resistance will come from the Germans and French. The Germans and French are grouping up. Macron and Scholz have already met. Macron is losing credibility in Europe, Scholz is living out his last days, and the position of the right is strengthening, while the leftist parties and supporters of the Democrats have failed. Right-wing trends will increase both in the U.S. and among Trump supporters around the world, including allies. This is the resource on which he will base himself, tightening relations even with allies. It's no coincidence that Mark Rutte says we need to increase the budget and admits Trump is right about paying for U.S. defense. Trump is reducing the U.S. contingent in Europe by 20%, 20,000 soldiers, and the remaining countries have to pay for their stay. There's logic to it. Why should America defend someone for free? That is, either you pay up or you buy LPG and weapons from America as he demands. He's willing to continue and reinforce that, but only if they pay. This is a capitalist world, and Trump, as a capitalist, rejects the ideals of the Democrats because the crisis has destroyed that bubble. This crisis is not just in the U.S., it is sweeping the entire democratic world. Those who do not belong to this camp are actively taking advantage of it. Other regimes are strengthening, and international law, as well as institutions, are in an amorphous state. What matters is the leadership of the United States and its president. Trump, so far in words, demonstrates this, but he behaves differently than he did in his first cadence and during the campaign. Give it time. Nothing drastic requiring urgent analysis is happening today. Watch your president's speech carefully. I listen to him every day, and it's clear to see that he is in full support of Trump. So far, Trump has said nothing to raise Ukraine's concerns. He's now criticizing Russia. He says Ukraine is ready for a deal. He is willing to make a deal, demanding a security guarantee from the democratic world. In these security guarantees, the U.S. must come first. He's talking about a peacekeeping contingent in Ukraine, with an emphasis on the presence of U.S. soldiers. This is exactly what peace through strength is in the current situation. Russia is opposed to this. We will see how events develop. At this point, after a few days in power, I'm in a positive mood about Trump. Mr. Yunus, I want to remind you that Trump said two important things online, including wondering why Saudi Arabia didn't lower oil prices to stop the war. And he will also address the OPEC countries. Second, he mentioned China, which is important to Russia because of oil and support for Putin's regime in the war. He also said that after talking to Xi, which was constructive, he hoped for a positive outcome. He excitedly said he hoped China would help end the war. Do you think there will be military support for Ukraine? He emphasized good relations with the Russian president and the people, but said he would have to toughen up if left with no choice.
Лично президенту России, что у него хорошие отношения с ним всегда были, и сделал реверанс в сторону российского народа за то, что как они вместе воевали во время Второй мировой войны. Уже жестко сказал, что главное ключевое слово было, вы мне не оставите другого шанса. Мне придется завинчивать гайки.
So to strengthen Ukraine's position. How can he strengthen Ukraine's position? The fact that Ukraine will receive even more support in this situation. Now Ukraine needs political support from Donald Trump. He is showing that support so far, and his statement is a political endorsement of Ukraine. He said Ukraine was ready for a deal and appealed to Russia, suggesting it should go for it because of the bad situation. He warned not to take the situation to the worst consequences, or he would have to tighten up the action. He did not specify which sanctions. One form is, for example, falling oil prices. In addition, there are many other measures, including strengthening Ukraine's military technical capabilities. Do you realize that the level of support from the Pentagon was minuscule? That's on the level of 5% of the Pentagon. Trump can help with an executive order. It can be done with one decree, one stroke of the pen. Moscow will notice it and realize how serious he is. So far, he's only expressed his support with words. Let's take our time. It is also interesting that the presidents of Azerbaijan and Ukraine met. Azerbaijan's president says it was Kiev's initiative. Zelenskyy expressed condolences to Aliyev over the plane crash and loss of life. It is important to pressure Russia to tell the truth, Zelenskyy said. Azerbaijan emphasized that the meeting was held on Kiev's initiative and ties in political, economic, and humanitarian spheres were discussed.
связи между азербайджанской и украинской в политической, экономической и гуманитарных сферах.
They discussed cooperation in the energy sector and regional security issues. How important do you think this meeting is now? She is important because President Zelenskyy is a media personality, and the whole world follows his meetings. I don't think he's accidentally meeting anyone today. His country is not willing to waste time in meetings. All leaders who come to Donetsk or host the president are those who are extremely important to Zelenskyy and Ukraine. Ukraine faces an existential threat. The question of Ukraine's existence is on the agenda. It is important to note that at the World Economic Forum in Davos, your president took the initiative to meet with the president of Azerbaijan. I already spoke about it yesterday, and I will repeat it for Ukrainian viewers. Be attentive to the information garbage that appears about the countries. Which are Ukraine's strategic partners. Follow the actions and words of the president, the meetings he holds, including the meeting with the president of Azerbaijan initiated by Zelenskyy. This emphasizes the importance of Azerbaijan, its president, and the topics discussed. It's no accident that I'm emphasizing this. Thanks for the question, because a lot of couch pundits, provocateurs, and grant makers working for the democratic mill in the US and Europe are often Armenian-centric. They spread false accusations that Azerbaijan is a pro-Russian country. After the recent tragedy with an Azerbaijani airplane shot down by a Russian Pantsir missile on its approach to Grozny. You see it in the relations between Russia and Azerbaijan. I'm explaining this in detail so that it will be clear to you when provocateurs like Portnikov start talking nonsense. Be careful, Ukrainians. Find out who pays these people for their grants and what values they promote, especially in a war. Protect your state and your president. Сегодня проводят те или иные встречи. Вы должны защищать ваше государство, вашего президента, потому что у вас идет настоящая война.